What have I just watched? I don't know what that movie was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be a book called Wuthering Heights, but it was very far from it. And before I went into the movie, I went in with an open mind, expecting something else. I saw the reviews, I saw what people were saying on the internet, but out of my love for the book for Wuthering Heights, I expected much more. I just felt like there is no way a person can make a movie out of this book and it would be so bad, if that makes any sense. So I just went in with that mindset and I was shocked. It was really bad. I almost burst into laughter in the cinema because I just couldn't keep it in. It was funny. The acting, um, a lot of the plot holes, comparison to the movie, everything. It was just funny to watch. And I saw people on the internet go and say things like, um, I'm sorry, but the movie isn't for you because people were complaining about the movie. And I think that's like the wrong perspective to take on it. You can't say the movie isn't for a person who is an enthusiast about the book. The movie is literally for them. It's literally titled Wuthering Heights. So the movie's for them and they've gone to the cinema to see it and it just wasn't up to par. And I think that there are a lot of themes that need to be addressed in how Emerald Fennell has portrayed the book and the implications of this on how people are responding to it in general. So I'm going to be breaking down Wuthering Heights and my thoughts on it. And I will start by giving like a brief summary of what happens in the story and the book itself before going into the movie and my thoughts on the movie. So starting with the novel is it's very much a Gothic. It's a tragedy and it explores generational conflict. And the novel starts with a tenant, Lockwood, who stays in Thrushcross Grange, which is not too far from Wuthering Heights, where Kathy lives and her father lives, obviously. And this tenant comes at a time where Heathcliff is a lot older and Kathy is already dead. And Nelly Dean takes him on on a journey and tells him how everything came to be and the story behind Heathcliff, the story behind Kathy's daughter, and the story behind Catherine Earnshaw, who isn't in the movie. Now, through this entire storyline, we get the story that Heathcliff was brought in from Liverpool by Kathy's father, and they named him Heathcliff, obviously, and he's a person of color in the book, so he's dark-skinned. Meanwhile, obviously, in the movie, he's very much not dark-skinned, like portrayed by Jacob Elordi, who everyone's swooning over. And it's just funny to watch everyone swooning over the character, despite the toxic traits he holds. Anyways, Heathcliff is brought in, and the father somewhat favors Heathcliff, and Hindley, which is Kathy's elder brother, despises Heathcliff. So when their father dies, he mistreats Heathcliff and essentially turns him into a servant. So Heathcliff is technically uneducated and mistreated in Wuthering Heights. And eventually, Heathcliff and Kathy kind of drift a bit because when they're still quite young, they come across the Linton's house, and which is Thrushcross Grange, where Lockwood is staying when Nelly's narrating, and they come across the Lintons, and the Lintons are Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton, who in obviously portrayed in the movie. And the entire concept of those two characters is that they are very much purists. So they are white, blonde hair, kind of how you would imagine them to be based on how Emily Brontë has described them in the book. And they obviously come across these kids and they take in Kathy because she's all like, I think a dog bit her or something. So they brought her in and she stays with them for a while and she ends up returning to Wuthering Heights. Obviously Heathcliff doesn't stay behind because they won't accept him and he's basically, because of his skin color, race, you know. So, Kathy comes back to Wuthering Heights, all changed. She's dressed in like a nice dress. They've really glammed her up, obviously. And then there's this dynamic between her and Heathcliff because she wants to marry Edgar Linton because she doesn't want to marry Heathcliff because of his status. And this entire trope leads to Heathcliff overhearing a conversation between Nelly Dean, who is the housekeeper, and Kathy, and Heathcliff runs away. And in this situation, Nelly Dean wasn't plotting anything. Nelly Dean is just a narrator. Obviously, she has some biases, but she isn't an antagonist in the entire story. So when Heathcliff runs away, Kathy marries Edgar. She ends up being with child, and then Heathcliff returns. Heathcliff meets Kathy again, but this time he returns somewhat educated, and he is obviously annoyed that Kathy is married to Edgar, and he is still talking to Kathy. They're still engaging in conversation, but he's jealous, so he decides to get revenge on Edgar and also Kathy, because like he loves Kathy, and there's this entire dynamic between them. They're very toxic, so he gets with Isabella Linton with complete hatred, just to get back at Kathy and to steal the entire like land, Thrushcrest Grange and everything. And Heathcliff returns and also stays in Wuthering Heights, where Hindley, Kathy's elder brother, stays, and essentially he gets revenge on everyone. Most of the characters die. Heathcliff lives. Kathy dies. They have kids. He gets with Isabella Linton, and he basically abuses her, and she runs away but comes back with their kid, Linton, Heathcliff. And essentially, like, the entire storyline is that Heathcliff is this villain, and his revenge is very much generational, and it's a generational conflict, and it affects everyone. And the entire point is that Kathy and Heathcliff are the source of all the problems. No one else is. That's the point of the story. Now, moving to the movie, which was very, very controversial because of how certain things were portrayed. It's very important to start with the reactions that I've seen about the movie, with certain people saying the movie was brilliant, it was amazing, they were crying, all of that stuff. I would like to say that, first of all, this is not to take a dig at anyone, but it was just that, like, I found it funny. I think I was almost laughing in the theaters because I just couldn't believe what Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë had been reduced to. I mean, it's her only novel, and look at how tragic and gothic and thrilling the novel is, just to be reduced to what Emerald Fennell reduced it to. So it was quite shocking to see that, and I was shocked in many scenes in the movie. But I think the first thing I want to address about the movie is the softening of Heathcliff and Cathy. So because Emerald Fennell wanted the audience to somewhat relate with the characters Heathcliff and Cathy and to root for them, she made them appear more innocent and less harmful compared to how harmful they are in the books. I mean, in the book, Heathcliff and Cathy are the source of their own problems. Cathy is the source of Heathcliff's sorrows because she refuses him despite being in love with him, ends up with someone she doesn't love, and starts this entire chain reaction, forcing Heathcliff to get revenge and much more. So that's the entire point. Meanwhile, in the movie, the misunderstanding between both of them is blamed on Nelly Dean, as Cathy saying one statement that she thinks Heathcliff is below her, saying that in the moment and changing her mind quickly, which is what happens in the movie. Meanwhile, in the books, she doesn't change her mind immediately. She runs after Heathcliff, but Heathcliff still leaves. And there's, in the movie, there's a scene where Cathy and Nelly Dean are speaking, and Cathy says that she would demean herself by marrying Heathcliff, and Nelly Dean sees Heathcliff listening in on the conversation and intentionally doesn't say anything to Cathy, and then Heathcliff leaves overnight, and then Cathy gets married to Edgar Linton, and Cathy would have changed her mind. Like, she was going to cancel the call of the wedding, but because Heathcliff left, she kept waiting actually before the wedding, hoping he would come back. But because Heathcliff left, she had to marry Edgar Linton. And in the books, that's just not what happens. It wasn't because Heathcliff left that. It was much more complicated than that, and it was her fault. So the movie trying to make it Nelly Dean's fault was quite confusing. And I also would like to talk about, like, them pushing the blame to Nelly Dean. I just didn't like it. And the racial shift and racial juxtaposition, because it shows that Emerald Fennell could not possibly imagine Heathcliff as a love interest in the book, being a person of color. She had to imagine him as white. She had to imagine, obviously Cathy is white as well, and that's how she could imagine the romance between both of them. That's why the characters are white. And then she makes the characters of color, who were never villains in the first place, villains, and she makes Nelly Dean a villain. I don't like that concept at all. And even with Edgar Linton in the movie, who is also a person of color, even though he's supposed to be like this white guy, that's the entire point. Like, it's about race. That's what the book is about. And he's also a person of color, and we kind of see how he's been pushed aside. In the books, we kind of see that Edgar Linton has more character to him. He can't stand Heathcliff. And in the movie, I think they've made him stand Heathcliff, because when Cathy dies, he puts his hand on his shoulder and tries to tell him, you don't want to see that. Like, book Edgar would never do that. And I get that they're different, but like, the difference is too vast. And in regards to the over-sexualization that happened in the book, in the movies, I think that it was quite unnecessary because they spent at least, I think, 20 minutes on sex scenes between Heathcliff and Cathy. It was too much. And meanwhile, while they were doing that, Cathy was with child, with Edgar Linton's child. She was cheating while she was pregnant with Edgar's child. I just didn't find that attractive. I found it disgusting. I think that if anyone is rooting for that kind of love, then that says a lot about them, because there's nothing appealing about someone cheating, even when they're literally married with a child pregnant. And the part of like the sexualized scenes whereby there was a scene where Jacob Elordi, there's like eggs broken or something, and there's runny eggs, and he touches it, and then he like does this, and he like looks at the camera. I think it was supposed to provide a form of like erotic, sensual feeling or response from the audience, but I found it hilarious. I was almost laughing. It felt like a joke. I just couldn't believe this was on my screen in theaters. So that was just one aspect. And then when it comes to Isabella Linton's character as well, obviously she marries Heathcliff as well in the movie and in the books. And in the movie, she's reduced to an animal. They make it seem like she likes being abused. And in the book, she doesn't. She literally runs away from Heathcliff because of how abusive he is. And I think that Isabella Linton's character in the book represents a lot of young girls, a lot of women who, when they see men like Heathcliff, for example, they think, oh, I can fix him, or they just have that mindset towards it. And from the book, at least we learn that mindset she eventually changes her mind because she realizes how terrible Heathcliff is, and she doesn't think she can fix him. She thinks he's dangerous to her, and she leaves. But in the movie, they're normalizing abuse. They're making it seem, they're sexualizing abuse. It's just disgusting. I think that for people that are enjoying that, it says a lot about them, and they should probably rethink it. There is a reason why Emily Brontë puts Isabella in her story and is portraying this idea of this abusive relationship, and for that to be reduced to what Emma Fennell has reduced it to is just shocking, and I just didn't like that at all. And I think that the stakes in the movie were extremely low. There were no stakes at all because the movie lacked a clear antagonist, right? In the book, we have Heathcliff and Cathy. Obviously, they're the source of their own problems, but we see how evil Heathcliff is and all the things he's going to, the extent to which he will go to do them. And he's not like, oh, I'm going to change my mind if you do this. No, Heathcliff, when he came back to see Cathy, he had revenge at the back of his mind. He came back to get revenge on Hindley for mistreating him, to get revenge on Cathy herself, despite loving her. Like, he came back for revenge. And that was the entire point. So in the movie, right, they just did like some scrappy attempt to make Nelly Dean a villain and try to make Heathcliff not as bad, saying that Isabella wanted the way he abused her. Like, they just made it seem like, oh, she approved of it. He told her that he didn't love her. He did all of that. Like, it was just difficult to watch. I don't know how anyone loves that. So that was one thing for me. And I also think that one credit I'm going to give to the movie, however, is the performance of the kids. And I think that Owen Cooper and I think the other actress is Charlotte. I don't remember her last name, but I think they did a good job. I think it was like there were some emotional stakes there. And I mean, in the movie, they didn't bring Heathcliff in when he was a baby. They brought Heathcliff in as like a kid. He wasn't a baby anymore. He just came in and they adopted him somewhat. And that's in contrast to the book, obviously, where the dad brought Heathcliff as a kid. And also in the movie, the dad is the villain. There is no Hindley. So the dad is the one that's abusive and he's the one who is an alcoholic and much more. And it wasn't a good concept at all because it also tried to make him a villain, an antagonist kind of. And it just was poorly written because it didn't make any sense, if I'm being honest. So I think that just some funny moments in the movie that I found funny. I think, firstly, the grills that Jacob Elordi had, like Heathcliff had, and like, I think it was just to portray him as more attractive and also with the earring, but it was just funny to watch because, like, they've literally lost the substance of the story to replace it with aesthetic appeal, and I just wasn't relating to that at all. And I just think that like the entire point is that of the movie is about like moral accountability and the fact that like, yes, they are the source of their own problems, but with Cathy being innocent, Heathcliff not as bad as of a guy, Nelly Dean a slight villain but not really a villain, the dad just being an alcoholic. Where is the conflict? There is like, it's forced, it's so forced, and that's why the movie was so bad and it's just a terrible attempt to adapt the book. And I was really concerned. I was genuinely deeply concerned. I think that anyone who hasn't read the books or whatever and has watched the movie and thinks the movie is good should read the book. They read the book so that they can have a clearer perspective on why a lot of people have this stance on Emerald Fennell's movie. And I really went into the movie with an open mind because I was just like, I don't really want to believe these comments, all of that. But the movie surprised me and I should have believed the comments, because what was that? Anyway, dismissing the ideas of, I'm just going to summarize everything. Dismissing the ideas of race, dismissing the ideas of the internal conflict and Cathy and Heathcliff being the source of their troubles, dismissing the idea of a main antagonist, a main villain of the story, Heathcliff, dismissing all of that, right, literally led to the movie having very low stakes, and it felt like watching a prolonged music video without any plot progression. So, yeah, it was very difficult to relate to that, but again, people enjoy what they enjoy, but it's just good to really rethink the themes in the book and how Emerald Fennell has chosen to villainize the character Nelly Dean, who's also a person of color, treat Edgar Linton as a very disposable character, also a person of color, and reimagined Heathcliff as white and made him more innocent, so that she's also appealing to the idea that, you know, this race, it's kind of racist if I'm being honest. So it's just important to look at that and to understand that these topics should not be dealt with lightly. So just a reminder, read the books, please, and thank you for watching the video. I hope to see you on the next one. Please like and subscribe. Bye for now.